Hey everybody, welcome to the Life in Service podcast, the podcast dedicating to telling the stories of our service members before, during, and after their time in uniform so we can all get a better understanding of what life is like for our service members. Today, I am joined by a good friend of mine, Nick Valentine. Thanks for coming on, man. How you doing?
Doing good, Adam. How are you?
So, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of my favorite things to do is to really get to know you guys a lot better so that people out there get a better understanding of, why I and a lot of other people who didn't serve have so much respect for those that did. Mm-hmm. And part of that is, the time I've gotten to know you and other friends of mine is you've told me your stories. Mm-hmm. And these are stories that I think can really help people understand. And I think there are people out there that really need to hear your stories. So we'll dig into it.
All right.
So where'd you grow up, Nick?
Well, I was born at the Great Lakes Naval Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. My father was a 20-year Navy veteran, so I grew up in the military as a dependent from when I was 1 till I was 19 years old.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because that's an aspect of military life that kind of gets put to the wayside sometimes. What was it like growing up a military dependent?
It had its ups and downs. A lot of great experiences being able to move and be in different locations and be around different type of people and different cultures and different things. So it made it kind of fun, but it also was hard because you would leave your friends and have to build new friendships and basically rebuild your life every 3 or 4 years and start over. It got harder as I got older because as you get older, you want to hold on to those friendships because you get close to people and you start doing things and get some more. When you were younger, it's hard, but it's not as hard as it is as you start becoming a teenager and things like that. I got lucky because my father we were stationed in Philadelphia near the time I started high school. And then he got transferred right in the middle of my freshman year. We got transferred to Maine. So at least I got to go to that place, and I knew that was my dad's last assignment, so I got to finish high school there. And the friends I made there were friends I still have now. So that was and those are really the only friends I still have now, are the ones that I had the very last 3 or 4 years of my dad's career. Because all the kids before that, they move on, you move on, so you kind of let go. And we didn't have social media and all the things we have nowadays to be able to stay in touch with folks, which I think is a little bit easier for the newer generations because they can stay in touch via, text message. They didn't have text messaging when I was a kid. We didn't have that stuff. So it did make it a little bit more challenging, but I don't regret a day of it. I loved it. My father being gone a lot made it difficult for me and my mother and my brother and I, but I got really close with my mother and my brother throughout that time because it was the three of us basically kind of running the household while my dad was out to sea or whatever. So it was challenging, but it was beneficial, I think, in the long run because you did get a lot of diversity. I grew up around different cultures and different people. Racism wasn't an issue in my house because not only was my dad in the Navy, and there were plenty of different people my dad would be around all the time, but because we moved and lived in all these different places, nobody cared in our family what color you were, what religion you were, just, hey, you're an American, we're here, let's just hang out and be friends. So that's kind of how I grew up, so that's how it was. Yeah.
And I've met your mom.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
She's an amazing woman.
Yeah, she's
and you hear her story of what it was like to, try to raise kids in that environment. That's something we'll have to dig into on another episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand on my mom because I was very athletic, so I was in all the sports. My brother was to a certain level, but not as much as me. So she's taking me to practice and trying to keep up with my brother, what's going on with him, blah, blah. So it was really hard on her, but she did an amazing job growing, raising us. And both of us turned out to be good kid, good young men, good citizens, good. I turned into a soldier. My brother went in the Navy for a little while. He got out. So, it all turned out really well. My brother has a family, I have a family. So, it all turned out the way it should have, I guess. So.
What would you say was the biggest struggle as, a child of somebody in the service that is deploying and things like that?
Just not having that parent around. I mean, my father was not around for most of my life. I mean, growing up, my dad, for instance, when we were stationed in South Carolina, we got there and we were in Goose Creek, South Carolina. My dad was stationed on the Blakely or on the Bruton. I can't remember which ship he was on then. But they were out to sea for 6 months. They'd come home for a month and then go right back out to sea for 6 months. So basically from my 6th grade years to like my 7th, 8th, 9th grade years, he was never really around. So it made it difficult because, and I say that, but it also, as teenagers, as young kids or whatever, me and my brother would take advantage of my father when he got home. Because he felt guilty not being home. So we'd get the toys we wanted or the new shoes we wanted or whatever, because my dad would just go get it for us because he felt guilty for not being there for us. So, but you learn that later on as I got older. I learned I was doing that, and I apologized to my father for doing that. He said, don't apologize. It was part of your life growing up, and that's part of what you had to do. And a lot of families in the military go through that. I was in the military. Now, I waited to have my first child till I was 35. I was almost out of the Army when I had my first child. And I did that on purpose because I knew how hard it was for me growing up with a father who was moving around all the time and what it did to me. And it didn't do bad things to me, but I just knew it'd be better for my kids if they could be in one place and grow up with the same friends and have that opportunity. So I waited to have my first child until I was about 3 or 4 years before I retired. So my son or daughter would only be 3 or 4. So I wouldn't have missed anything major in their life either, because when they're little like that, they don't remember anything anyway. But 4, 5, 6, they're starting to remember stuff. And I was going to be home all the time then. So that's what my objective was. So when I retired, my daughter was 4 years old. So it worked out for me because I've been around everything in her life since she's been, old enough. So, and then I had my second son when I was 40, and my second child when I was 40. So yeah. But being a military dependent, honestly, I really think the public should really look. Those are the real heroes. My wife, my kids, my mother, my brother, and I, because we put up with our family member not being around and being out doing something for our country to support the mission of the president or whatever we're doing. So
well, I know
honestly look at it that way. Yeah.
There's a lot of service members that I've met that feel, there are dependent families that kind of take advantage of the situation and want a bunch of sympathy, even though they're not the ones in uniform.
Yeah,
but you feel that they serve in their own way?
Yeah, but I mean, like what you're saying, unfortunately, 10% of our population are just those type of people. They're going to take advantage of situations because they can. But the other 90% that are just good, wholesome people that are trying to do right and make sure they're raising their kids right, whether spouse is deployed or whatever, and deserve those accolades and don't take advantage. Like me, to this day, I don't even ask, when I go into a business and buy something, I don't ask for a military discount. If they offer and ask me if I'm military, I show them ID. But I don't ask for it because that's just who I am. My wife will ask for it because it's been instilled in her to do that, to make sure she's saving money for our family, and you know what I mean? But I don't think all spouses do it, but there are that 10 to 15% that take advantage of things they can because that's their personality type. They're very narcissistic, or they have that different type of, they want to absorb as much as they can for themselves and take advantage of that. So there is that. So I think that's definitely there, but it's a small percentage of the military dependents that do that, I think.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, your mom's an awesome person.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some good conversations with her as well over the years and getting to know you guys and becoming good friends. And I couldn't see her doing that kind of thing, but she's still busting her butt helping you.
Oh yeah. She works hard every day. With my father passing away a couple of years ago, she's really become the center point of my life now because she's the one that's there, and I take care of my mom like my dad did, make sure she's got everything she needs and all that stuff. So, but again, military dependents have to use what's available to them because their spouse is gone. So they're going to take advantage of things they need to take advantage of to make sure their kids are good or their family's good or whatever they're doing. But yeah, there's some bad apples out there, I'm sure. But for the most part, I think the majority of spouses and things, they do the right thing. They take advantage of it when it benefits their family. And I think that's what they should look at.
Would you say they're serving in their own way?
Oh, they're definitely serving because they're putting up with their spouse not being home, the danger their spouse is in, that they have to live with that stress. That if they, for instance, they got a young child, a 1 or 2 year old child at home, and their husband's deployed and he gets killed, now they're a single parent with a 1 or 2 year old, and the military is going to kick them out of housing. They're going to, they're not going to have the things that they were promised they were going to have when they got married, right? They're going to lose all those things. So yeah, it's hard because those situations dictate what people do, and that makes it difficult for people.
Now, you mentioned a little while ago that you ended up serving yourself.
Yep.
Your brother went into the Navy.
Yeah, he did a 4-year stint in the Navy, and he got out. But he did some time. He served like his dad did. And then I went in the Army and decided I was going to, initially when I got in, I was only going to stay in for my first tour and get out because I had a baseball scholarship and I could have played professional baseball and I was really good at baseball. And my goal, but then I got hurt and I tore my shoulder up pretty bad and I couldn't throw. I couldn't do anything for a couple of years. So I said, screw it, I'm just going to stay in the Army. So I just re-enlisted and stayed in the Army and did 20 years.
So was it your dad's service that inspired you to join?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, my father was my hero growing up as a kid. I would see him in his uniform and all the sailors, how they respected him and talked to him. And it just made me so proud to be my dad's son that I didn't know what to do with myself. Now, I was going to go in the Navy.
Yeah, let's dig into that.
Yeah, let's dig into that.
You went into the Army.
Yeah, so I went in the Army because when I was probably 12, 13 years old, the Navy has what they call Tiger cruises, where you go to a certain port, link up with a ship, you get on the ship, and then you get to come home to your home port with your father on the ship. So we were stationed in Philadelphia. and we had a Tiger Cruise. We drove to Rhode Island. They drove us up to Rhode Island in vans and all that stuff. And then the ship docked, and we got on the ship with our fathers, and then the ship went out to sea. And when I say went out to sea, we went out to sea. Like, we couldn't see land. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not seeing no land. It wasn't like we were running down the coastline. I could see the whole. And Sarge, I was just not in a good way. I was puking the whole time. I was sick the whole time. I couldn't handle the motion sickness. Was just overwhelming for me. My brother, no problem. He was walking around, no big deal. I'm laying down on my dad's rack, puking in my guts out the whole time. You know what I'm saying? Trying to eat, puking. So I decided, yeah, Dad, I'm going to serve, but I'm going to keep my feet on the ground. I'm going to go in the Army because I can't do the water like that. I can't do the water. So that's what I ended up doing. I just told my dad. But my dad was proud of me. He didn't care what branch I went into. He was just proud that his son served like he did. So I think that was a bigger deal for him.
So what did you end up doing in the Army?
When I initially enlisted, I was a combat engineer. I did 4 years as a combat engineer. Then I got hurt, like I said earlier. So I reclassified. When it was time for me to re-enlist, I just reclassified and went into the medical field and just decided to do something different. Went to San Antonio to Fort Sam for it was about 8 months to a year in school, because I picked a job that had a very long school to go to and stuff like that. So that's what we did.
Now, you've told me some, stories of your time in service. What year was it when you initially enlisted?
Ironically enough, I enlisted on September 11th, 1990, which is just ironic that it was that day. On my enlistment, it says 11 September 1990. So I came in the early 90s or mid 90s. I basically took the summer off from high school. I graduated in June of 90. Took the summer off. Helped my parents move back to Chicago because my dad was finishing his master's degree. So I helped my family move back to Chicago, and then I left from there to come to basic training. I went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood and AIT at Fort Leonard Wood, because I was in a cohort unit when I first came in as a combat engineer. So we all went to basic training together, our first AIT together, and then we all went to our first battalion together. So there's 170 of us in that group, and 170 of us went to basic. The ones that graduated went to AIT, and when we graduated AIT, I think there was 140 of us left. We all went to 13th Engineering Battalion in Fort Ord, California, and then just got broken up in the battalion. But we all went to basic training AIT and then our first unit together. So it was a really cool thing that the Army was doing back then. They called it a cohort unit. So that basically means we all went through everything together as a phase, and then went to our first unit together too. So it was really pretty cool because we knew everybody. So when we got to our new unit, there's a lot of people we knew because we were all there together.
Yeah.
And some of us got in Alpha Company, Bravo Company, Charlie Company, but we all knew each other from being in basic and AIT together. So that whole first 17 weeks of our lives in the military, and then we got to go to our first unit together. So that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool thing to have happen. So.
Yeah, but then 11 years later, 9/11 happens.
And 11 years later, 9/11, I was a instructor at BNOC, which is the basic non-commissioned officers course. I don't know what they call it now. They call it some crazy thing now, but I was an instructor actually at lunch. We were all at lunch at our little favorite spot. We all went to as instructors, and we were all of a sudden the news broke, and we all just hauled butt back to our unit, and then went to see the sergeant major and said, "What's it?" We all were like, "We want to get us out of here. We all want to go to a unit so we can deploy. We don't want to be sitting here. If there's going to be combat, we want to go." And of course, he said, "No, you guys are important here because you're setting NCOs up to become better NCOs of leaders. I said, "All right, sergeant major." But then eventually I PCS'd and then I got to go. So yeah, it took a little while, but yeah.
Now, you did crucial work in your deployment.
Yeah, well, I ran aid stations, and then we also did the combat stress control stuff. So we were debriefing everybody when they got back from mission, if they got engaged and stuff like that, to make sure everybody was okay, make sure they had a voice if they needed to come talk to somebody that was not going to be judgmental and not going to be all that stuff. So we worked really hard with those kids. But running an aid station in a theater of operations is difficult because you're dealing with medevacs, you're dealing with all the bad things that are going on, we had a lot of, and we worked with the reserve unit when I was in Afghanistan. They were a wonderful group of people, great doctors, great nurses, great staff, and they did amazing work over there, saving lives. But also they were doing great things in the the community of where we were in the theater, taking care of the population there and stuff, doing stuff like that too. So it was a really good experience, but a very difficult job. Running an aid station in a combat theater is very difficult work.
So dig into that a little bit, because one of the things that we're trying to do here on this podcast is hit different styles of jobs, because there's, a tanker's not going to understand what you went through running an aid station. Right. So what does it really take to run an aid station?
Well, it's a lot of coordinations, because in a medical environment, you're going to have the leadership that manages the day-to-day operations and the logistics of everything that happens. But then you also have the doctor corps, the nursing corps that deal with patients, right? All the patients that come in. For instance, My job when a medevac came in, our job when a medevac came in was to coordinate the medevac landing, make sure the ambulances were out on the line, pick them up, bring them back to the hospital. Now, once those kids hit the hospital and they went into the aid station, which is where we did the triage, the kids would come in for triage, and as soon as they hit triage, now our hands are off. It's all the doctors, nurses, and medics. And we wait until we get the numbers from them and what happens and of course our dentists, when we have mass cows, meaning a lot of people coming at once, that's what a mass cow is. So for instance, if we had like 20 people coming on all these different flights coming in, the dentist was the guy in charge of triaging. So they'd all be laying on their cots out, and we'd have them in cots out there, and he would go through and figure out which ones needed to go in immediately and which ones could wait a little while before they went in, So logistically, it became difficult because as the NCOIC of the aid station, my job was to help with triage once they got there, and then ensure the command teams were notified on how their soldiers are doing, right? And some of those kids weren't like on our FOB in Salerno, and we were in FOB Salerno. We had an infantry battalion and a couple of different engineer units and different things on there. But every kid that came in wasn't necessarily from our FOB. So then we had to track down what FOB they were out of, where their home base was for them. And we'd have to call down there and talk to their chain of command. Say, yeah, their soldiers okay. We're getting ready to medevac them out to Bagram, and then they're going to go up to Germany because its injuries are that bad, or they're not that bad. He's going to be here. We're going to take him up, and you'll be able to come pick him up in a couple days. So it really depended on the magnitude of what happened.
Do you have a specific day or story from working in that position that kind of sticks with you?
Well, it was we had a few mass cows that were pretty hairy. I know one time I even had to get in the truck and be on the ambulance, and unfortunately one of the kids we got him in the truck and he stopped breathing, so we had to start CPR. When we started CPR and we did compressions, his whole chest cavity was crushed. So as soon as we started compressions, blood came squirting out of his mouth and like in the side of my ear, kind of. And we were like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like we don't know what to do now because now there's nothing. So I told the driver, just hammer down, get there. I don't care, drive through, whatever. And we got back. Unfortunately, that young man passed away because his injuries were just too traumatic. Because his whole, like literally every bone in his chest, all the rib cage, it was completely crushed and like gone. And as soon as I started to do compressions, it felt like you were just pushing into a balloon. It went flat to his back. And it was just the craziest thing I ever seen in my life. So there were some traumatic things that happened. We were also now, I wasn't there, but Pat Tillman and the Ranger, because the Ranger Battalion was on our FOB. Part of the Ranger Regiment, Task Force Red, was actually on our FOB. Pat Tillman and his guys were there. He got there, I got there in April. His injuries happened the very beginning of April. I got there mid-April. So literally right before I got there, Pat Tillman had just got killed and come through our FOB. That was the FOB I was at. So we had and there was a lot of attention on us when I first got there because of that. Like we had news crews coming down all the time, and I'm like, hey, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't even here yet, so go talk to those guys. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I'm not dealing with that. And it was an unfortunate situation. But that was the other thing too, because we ran an aid station, soldiers died that we had to bag up and prepare them to move them. And we had a mortuary affair team that was there that helped us get them prepped. And then, but that was probably the most dignified thing we did, but it was also the crappiest thing we had to do because we're putting soldiers in bags and then putting them in coffins and then draping the coffins and then prepping them to get them picked. But I had a wonderful team. The mortuary affairs team was amazing. And then my medics and nurses were just the respect that we showed these soldiers, cleaning them up, getting them all dressed up the best we could before we got them back. Because when they got back to Germany is when they got their complete, kind of take care of the situation. But we got them squared away as best we could before we sent them out and stuff like that. So there's a lot of, that's where a lot of that stuff comes in, and you see it. Like we had special forces guys coming in with body parts, and you're just like, wow, how does a body part end up like that? Or what does it go through? So, and like you said, there's tankers out there that don't know what medics do, but they see what happens on the battlefield. They see their guy getting hit. They see their guy with their leg over there and their whatever over. They see it. They don't have to deal with the side that we have to deal with, which is back trying to put them back together or try to save them, but they see it. So that's the context that I would always tell those guys. You don't need to see what I see. I don't need to see what you see. I need to fix what happens when they come here. That's our job, is to try to fix it. Your job is to try to keep them alive. Because that's what I tell all my medics when they go, I don't care what you do, just stop the bleeding and keep them alive and get them back to us and let us deal. We'll let the doctors get them back to where they're at. So that was the push we always had with them.
So what would you want civilians and people who've never, and there's a lot of service members that never see combat, what do you want them to understand about what you experienced?
Well, I wouldn't say, there's a lot of veterans and soldiers. There's still some soldiers in service that served during Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, a lot of us phased out now because Iraq and Afghanistan's been over for a little while. But combat, you don't come back the same human being you went there. Like my wife will tell you, I'm not the same person I was. I'm not even close to the same person I was before I went over there. Because the stuff you see, I mean, I still get tastes in my mouth. I get feelings of different things that that happened over there happen to me now still, because psychologically in my head, when certain things happen, they trigger things in my head. And that's what I tell people, that because I deal with PTSD, I have my own PTSD issues that I deal with all the time. I have a lot of nightmares. I don't sleep good. I work through a lot of things, and my wife has just been my right hand, walking me through that, making sure I'm doing the treatment I need to be doing, giving me shit when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So I get
as a wife should.
Yeah, she does, and she gives me shit, and then I go do what she tells me to do to make sure that I'm doing right for our kids and our family. But a lot of guys struggle with that. So what I tell people on the outside is this: there's no way you're going to know what these men have been through. All you can do is honor the fact that they served, respect the fact that they served, and give them some space and some understanding before you judge them based on what they say or do to you in front of you, because you don't know what happened to them. Like me, when I meet a veteran who's been deployed, I don't talk about what happened to me. I let them talk to me about what happened to them, and I just listen. I don't judge them. I don't interrupt them. I just let them get it off their chest, because that's what they need to do. And that's what I tell other veterans to do. We all have our story. I could tell stories all day long and make you crazy. You'd be like, what? But that's not what I'm trying to do when I talk. Like at my brewery, I have guys come and sit down at the bar, and we're sitting, I serve them a beer, we're talking, and they're just talking, and I'm just listening. And a lot of it is just be there to listen to them. That'd be probably the best thing I'd say, is just be willing to listen and not judge. It could change that veteran's life for the rest of his life, because there's somebody out there now that he knows just listens and didn't judge him. Because some of these guys did some pretty horrendous shit because they had to. Some of them killed kids. Some of them did things they didn't want to do, but they had to, because that kid picked up a weapon or did whatever. Things happen in combat that normally wouldn't happen. And I tell people all the time, the hardest thing for us to do is we have to deal with that the rest of our lives. We have to deal with those things the rest of our lives. I see faces in my head every night when I go to sleep. My wife doesn't. My wife, we have a pillow a pillow wall between us, because I toss and turn and I do a lot of stuff at night. I'm not violently tossing and turning, but I move a lot. Like I'm always shifting, and it drives my wife nuts, because we had to buy a special mattress that kind of gives me my own space, because I'm moving. And she's like, you're a nightmare, because I'll talk in my sleep, because I'm yelling out calls, I'm yelling out different things. Because I actually went out on missions with guys too, because I got called in with a special forces unit because their medic went on leave, and I was a senior medic in the unit, so I wasn't sending in my privates. So I said, all right, I'll go. So I went out for 2 or 3 weeks, and I went out with 7th group and 5th group and did the stuff with them, and we went into the mountains and we did shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though I was the medic in special forces, everybody's a soldier first, and then you have your specialty. So when we went on a mission, I was just as important as the rest of them, even though I hadn't trained with them to nothing, because they trained me in the FOB, got me all ready for how to do all the things they were going to do. So I was clear, and I saw stuff I shouldn't have had to see. I did stuff I shouldn't have had to do. And that's what I tell people. Every soldier does that. They do stuff and see stuff that they weren't supposed to do. So that's just be patient with them. That's the biggest thing I could tell civilians, is just be understanding and patient, because there are a lot of veterans out there too that are just full of shit. Unfortunately, there's those guys out there that act like they did all this stuff and they didn't do it, because they're, like you said earlier, they're trying to take advantage of things. They're trying to bullshit the VA, or they're trying to bullshit people so they can stolen valor type stuff, where they're just trying to, take advantage of certain things. So you got to be careful of all that too, because I've run into that a few times too with veterans that talk, and I'm like, and I had like one guy I talked to, he was saying he was where I was at the same time I was there, he was in the area I was in, but I didn't tell him nothing, but I was just listening to him, and I'm like, that don't sound right, bub. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you're telling the truth here. You know what I'm saying? And then now you've lost faith with me, because now you're BSing me, because I know that didn't happen, because I was in that theater, I was in that area, I was in charge of the aid stations and stuff. I saw all the stuff that came out. So it's a very delicate thing.
It is, and what I'm trying to, what we're trying to do here with this podcast is open the eyes of not only civilians, but veterans out there. There's a lot of people out there that don't have the ability, or their pride's too high to really say, hey, I'm hurting, I'm struggling, right?
Every day. Yeah.
Me and you have had some intense conversations about this subject, and we'll dig into how some of my family members have struggled in later episodes, but hopefully this will give some of those people, something to listen to, at least.
Yeah.
Something to make them not feel so alone.
Well, and to caveat of that, what I would tell any veteran that's listening to this is don't be afraid to be vulnerable, but do it around people you think you can trust. Just don't do it in the public. But like if you're around a friend and you think you can trust this friend, don't be afraid to let it out. Because I tell guys all the time, listen, I have suicidal thoughts daily. I've had gun in my mouth, the trigger, the hammer cocked, ready to kill myself. The only thing that stopped me is my kids and my wife and my family, because they need me still. And that's how I justify my existence now, is the need for my family. If my wife and kids ever die in a car accident or some shit, I'm gone the next day. I'm just letting you know right now, I'd be gone the next day, because my purpose for living would be gone. Like my purpose, because see, a lot of people talk about soldiers don't have a purpose anymore. 90% of soldiers, any married soldier, any soldier with kids has a purpose still. Now, if you were a single soldier, you're still a single guy, you might not have a purpose. You got some challenges you got to get through as a single guy. But if you're married, got kids, you have a purpose. So I look at that as BS. You have a purpose still. Your kids are alive, your wife's alive, or whatever. Even if you got family that you love, then your family's alive, your brother, sister, whoever. So, but the biggest thing I tell veterans when they listen, if you want to talk about suicide, let's talk. I'll listen to you. I believe it. I understand the relief you feel from thinking of you for gone, all that problem's gone, all that shit's gone, all that shit stops in your head. You're right, it does. But is it going to solve the problem for you and your family? No, it's going to solve the problem for you. So don't be a selfish prick and do that shit. Step up, man up, talk to people. I tell my soldier all the time, any soldier, you call me at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll answer the phone and I'll go to Walmart, I'll go to Applebee's, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and you can just tell me everything's going on here. I don't give a shit, I'll listen. Because that's what you need to be. You need to be vulnerable, but you also need to be available. And I'm in the CVMA, which is the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association group, right? There's like 50 of us in there. We're all combat veterans in there, like 80 of us in there, I guess. And I tell all the guys in there all the time, I don't care what's going on. If you're having thoughts like that, you give me a call. I'll sit down and talk to you. I'll listen, and I'll just listen. I'm not gonna judge you, because I think about it all the time too. And I got a weapon right next to my bed. I got weapons in my truck. I got weapons everywhere. And I think about it all the time. I just know I can't do it because I have people that count on me and that I'm responsible for still. So I have a purpose. So have a purpose. As simple as it sounds, find a purpose. It could just be your job. It could just be your kid. It could be your wife. It could be your sister. It could be your brother, your mom or dad. Just have a purpose, but talk to somebody. It's okay to talk about suicide. It's just not okay to do it, right? So I express that to guys all the time. Talk to me about it, because I'll listen, because I have the same thoughts all the time. All the time. There's days I wish I was dead so I don't have to deal with none of this shit that I have to deal with every day on a day-to-day basis. And then I look at my picture of my son or my daughter and I'm like, that's the reason why I gotta be here, because they still need me. They still need me. So I gotta be here,
So we've dug into a little bit about your background and how you struggled since. What was it like for you when it was finally time for you to take that uniform off, that transition? Because I know that's a hard thing for anybody.
Yeah. I'm gonna be blunt. I was excited. I was also petrified, because I've been doing something the same way for 20 years, and you do the same thing over and over for 20 years. It's hard to kind of exit that. I was excited because I was ready to get out. I love the military. I love the guys. I love being a soldier, but I was ready to get away from the politics and stuff, because as you get more senior in the military, it becomes more political, right? It becomes about who did you piss off and who didn't you piss off, and I didn't want to play that game anymore. So I was excited to get out and get away from that, but I wasn't excited about leaving the soldiers and the soldiers that I took care of, because I was a leader most of my career. I mean, I'm 87 in 10 years, so I was fast tracking everything. Retired as an 87 because I pissed off too many colonels and told them to fuck off and hurt my NCOERs. And because the way the system is in the military, you get one bad NCOER, your career's over if you're an NCO. Because one of my biggest things that I used to talk to all the sergeant majors about is, why don't they take your best NCOR and your worst NCOR and throw them away, then just look at what's left? You know, it's like taking the best score and the worst score out and then giving, you know, your so you get your grade. But I don't want to digress. But anyway, transition out of the military. My first job when I got out of the military was working at a juvenile detention center as a drill instructor. So I was still wearing a military uniform and a drill sergeant hat, and we were smoking some kids and doing some stuff with some young youth that were trying to get their head life and their head space right. Try to get in, and it was a good job because I was helping a lot of young teenage kids that were having a hard time, and they were able to reach out to us as drill sergeants and use us as kind of mentors for their things. So it was cool that way. But the transition part was hard because you're used to certain things. I still get, to this day, I've been out for almost 15 years now. To this day, I wake up every day at 5:30, whether the alarm's on or not. I'm not saying I get up. Wake, right?
Yeah, let's clarify.
I know I don't have to go to PT, but the point is my body is so accustomed to getting up at that time of night or that time in the morning that I still, to this day, 5:15, 5:30, I wake up. I look at the clock, okay, I can go back, and I roll back over, go to sleep, or I roll over and grab my wife and kind of get through the pillow barrier and get to my wife because now I'm not sleeping as hard. But it was hard, and I tell people all the time, and I think the hardest part is the culture of your life changes. You're not in an environment, because that first job I got, I mentioned it, most of the guys I was working with were veterans, but there were civilians there too, excuse me. And one of the first things I learned being in the civilian sector is, as a military guy, you're a target. You're a threat to them because of your discipline, because of your attitude, because you're able to deal with things that other people don't deal. Like, the one thing I learned about the military was I've learned to deal with stuff that people that have never been in the service aren't going to deal with that very well. To me, it's no big deal. I just move past it and go on and keep driving on. Or like my boss yells at me, okay. I don't take that home with me and hate him or another. But the civilians, because like I was in that job for a year. I did that job for a year. But the first 6 months I was there, you know, I'm doing everything I can to do the job I was told to do, which was take care of these kids, mentor them, you know, and I'm doing that. And we had civilian counterparts that went around. So for every drill sergeant, there was 2 civilian counterparts. So if I was assigned to a certain group of cadets, because they called them cadets, if I was assigned to a certain group of cadets, I had 2 civilians that worked with me. Usually it was a male and a female, right? Well, they were kind of the good cop, bad cops, like mom and dad kind of thing, and I was the drill sergeant, right? So they looked at me differently. But the problem is that most of the kids wouldn't go to them after I'd been there for a little while. They would just come directly to me because I fixed their problem or I addressed their issue, and it didn't float around with them. So I became a target for them. So they were turning me in for every misstep that I did in the job. Like if I didn't do something, they would write a report up on me. And I get called into the office and told, hey, you were, and I said, all right, my bad, I'm learning. And in the beginning, I was just like that. Okay, I'm learning, now I won't do that anymore. And I didn't do it anymore, but the point was, every day for like almost 6 months, I got written up. Because I was a threat to them, because the kids weren't going to them anymore, they were coming to me for everything. So I became a threat. And I run into a lot of veterans that are like that, whatever job they get, because their attitude is better, their discipline's better, they show up on time, they're never late. They do all these things that are just basic things you would assume that everybody does. Not everybody does that, right? So you get a target on your back. And that was hard for me because I'm used to being around people that we were all looking out for each other all the time. Now all of a sudden, they're only looking out for themselves, not me. They're trying to throw me under the bus so they can get what they need to get.
So
it was hard, yeah.
Well, would you say that was your hardest part of the transition, or was it just kind of giving up that structure a little bit that you were so used to?
Well, part of this is structure and the purpose. Like we talked about earlier about the purpose, right? You had a bigger purpose. I had to find a new purpose, which I found. It was my daughter, my son, my wife, my kids, my family. But it took me a while to figure that out. It took me about a year and a half, 2.5, because my PTSD struggles were the most severe in the first 2 years I was out. That was when I struggled the hardest because I didn't have the military to lean back on because it was gone. I didn't get to put my uniform on and remember that soldier that died over in Iraq or Afghanistan. That's okay, I'm putting this on and I'm going to keep doing my job. You don't have that anymore. So you lose some of that worth that you feel you had. And I tell people all the time, soldiers lose their purpose, but they also feel like they lose their worth. They're not worth as much anymore because they're not a soldier, right? They're a veteran now. Like me, you'll never ever, in your whole entire life, you'll never see me wearing a hat that says I'm an Iraq veteran or Afghanistan veteran or I'm a veteran. I'll wear shit that says Army on it, military themed stuff, but nothing that says I'm a veteran. Because I don't want everybody to know I'm a veteran. I want them to get to know me first and then ask me questions, and I'll openly answer them for them. But
so you don't want
your
veteran status to be your main personality.
I don't want that to be the reason you talk to me or the reason you don't talk to me. That's not who I am as a person, right? And it frustrates me when I see other veterans doing that. They're wearing their veteran hat and they think, oh, because I'm wearing that hat, people, no, sorry, nobody gives a shit. Because I'm saying nobody really gives a shit. They're gonna say, oh, thank you for, and I hate that when people say thank you for your service.
Why do you hate that? Because that's a pretty common thing. I mean,
It is
civilians think we're supposed to say it.
I respect that civilians want to say that. People that didn't serve want to say it. I respect that part. But for me, I find it disrespectful because I didn't go into the military to look for that accolade. I went in the military because my father served. I wanted to serve my country to keep my country in the ability that we have as a country, that we have freedom, that we have the thing. Now, I know there's 180 other countries that are free and all that other stuff, but our country is always based it off of our independence, right? I take it all the way back to when we fought the independent war in 1776. That's my mentality about why I'm in the military, is because of what happened in 1776, not because of what might happen 20 years from now or what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan, because what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan is not going to affect what happens in America. Those two countries aren't involved in a big export thing for us. I mean, yeah, there's some oil from, but realistic, we can go take that stuff if we wanted to. Like, we could go take it if we wanted to. We don't have to worry about it. So I didn't look at Afghanistan and Iraq as like a war that had an impact. Like, World War II had an impact because we're stopping a nut job from fucking killing off
Half the world.
Half the world of people because they were Jewish or they were different, or different color, and they weren't white people with blonde hair and blue eyes, shit, whatever. But the point is, those are different mechanisms, right? That's why they would say the World War and World War II were real world wars, right? They impacted more. Afghanistan and Iraq were technically a war, but they weren't really a war. They were more of a skirmish / a slap in the face of those countries saying, don't ever mess with us again because we're going to come over here and jack up your world. Didn't really have the impact of World War I or World War II. So for me, I would rather say thank you for your service to a World War II veteran because they were there, or a World War I veteran because that war impacted the world as a whole.
So for the people out there that, me included, and I've said it and now I don't, unless I know it's somebody that appreciates it, because you never know. Like you said, you find it disrespectful. What would you suggest that a civilian say to a service member?
I don't, honestly, just thank you. They don't have to say for your service. They can just say thank you. I mean, I can respect that because it's more of a, hey, thank you for doing what you did, right? Which is thank you for your service in a sense. But for me, the reason I take it the way I do is because when you serve and you say thank you for your service, well, what do you know about service?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's the reason why most of us get that way. 'Cause what do you really know about service? You're a civilian who you're probably independent doing what you're doing, or you're working for whatever. What do you know about service? Why would you think you have the ability to thank me for my service? Why don't you serve? Because I'd rather you go do something to serve your community, do some volunteer work or something. Go out and do something, serve. Then you'll understand what that service feels like. And some people do that. Don't get me wrong. I know there's people out there that do a lot of great things in their community and do things.
I try.
Yeah, and you do because you help support businesses and you do a lot of other things that people don't realize that you do. But maybe it's a bad terminology to say I find it disrespectful. I find it
It's not coming across how people think it is.
Underwhelming. I know they want to say thank you because they appreciate that I served and I went over there and did that, And I can respect that because I understand where they're sitting from. They don't understand what I did and what I'm about, what I've went through, what I've seen, what I've done, right? So they don't know all the baggage I have with that thank you, right? You say thank you for your service. Well, my service has got a lot of baggage. I'm carrying a lot of bags, right? I got a 100-pound ruck on right now, right? And you don't have that. You're walking around light, free. You don't have to worry about it because you didn't have to go over there and do what I did. So I guess it's more of a thing where veterans get that way. Some of us do, not all of us. Some of us like to say that people say thank you for your service and they probably appreciate it. Me, I'm different because I saw all the horrific things from war. And all it does for me is it brings back those memories too. That's the other part of it too. When you say thank you for your service, a lot of times it triggers things with us because now we go back to our service and we don't want to be back there. So when you say thank you for your service, I start thinking about my service again. When I might have been thinking about, the football game on today and and I'm not worried, and I'm focused on better things in my life, and now you brought me back to the hell I was in because you said thank you for it. And I don't think that's fair, but that's the reality of it. So when you say thank you for your service, Nick, I say, all right, man, you're welcome. But then it brings me back to Afghanistan or Iraq, or it brings me back, and now I'm having those memories that come flooding back forward, and I don't want that. So it's a kind of a catch-22. I don't know if it's the best way to say it, because I know there's a reason you're saying it to me. If you were a civilian, like you would say it to me, I know you're saying it out of appreciation and respect. You're not saying it because you're trying to trigger, but a lot of times it's a trigger for us because it's going to bring those memories back to the forefront of our minds because now we're remembering our service and we were just not thinking about it, and now we are. So that's the challenge I think that most people don't understand.
But what most people also don't understand about you, Nick, is your service hasn't ended. You're not wearing an Army uniform.
No.
Right?
No,
But
God, no.
you have found ways to continue serving every day, different ways. You even started your own charity called Operation Phantom Support.
Yep.
And you've struggled for years to keep it going, but it's not dead yet.
Not
So dig into that. What inspired you
All right.
to start OPS, and what have you tried to do with it?
So honestly, what inspired me was my time as a dependent and how hard it was for me and my mom and my brother to get by when my dad was gone. And realizing that we're one of the largest military bases in this country. It's got 40,000, 37, 30, whatever, a whole bunch of soldiers on it, whole bunch of spouses, whole bunch of kids. And when those husbands or spouses are deployed, those families struggle a little bit more because one, their spouse isn't there, but two, they're the primary breadwinner and and then there's all these other issues that come up because some soldiers don't give their wife access to this. There's a whole lot of problems that pop up. So I wanted to be a place where those wives are having problems with those things. They could come to me and I could take care of it for them so their husband can stay focused on what they were doing on their deployment and they could stay focused and come home to their families and not be worried about their wife and kids, not paying attention, and they get killed over there because they're not 100% focused. So that was my intention behind Operation Phantom Support was, yeah, it helps the soldiers too, and it helps all that, and that's great. But it was more for the dependents. It wasn't really for the soldiers. It was more for me to take care of their spouses and their kids while they're gone, so that they knew they had a place they can come if they needed help, and I would sit down and help them. Even if we didn't provide the service they needed, if a spouse came in to me and said, my husband's deployed right now, I need help, I would be on the phone calling everybody I knew and their brother just to make sure I could take care of this woman and her kids to make sure she's okay. So when next time she talked to her husband on the phone, she said, nope, Mr. Valentine over at OPSA took care of us. We're good to go, babe. Don't worry about it. Stay focused. Do your thing. I'll be all right. We're good now. We got food. We got clothes for the kids. We got backpacks. We got school supplies. We got everything we need. We're good.
All the way down to birthday cakes. You guys have done.
Yeah, we do a lot.
Get your tires fixed, all kinds of stuff.
We have there's a car repair program, tire replacement, birthday cakes, Christmas toys, backpacks for school. We had a food pantry, but we lost that because unfortunately we had a young spouse who didn't understand what our donations platform was set up for. She called and complained, and the Capillary Food Bank shut us down because they didn't listen to me. They didn't listen. They didn't go to our website and look at it. It's never said that you had to donate or give us money to get food. It was we were asking for donations because to keep the place running, we have to raise money and to provide that service.
Because it's a nonprofit.
Right, because it's a nonprofit. But to provide that food pantry service, we still have to raise money because we have to pay for the fuel for the truck. We had to pay for the truck. We got to pay for the employees that I have working there. We had to pay for the building we're in. We had to pay for the insurance on the building. We had to pay for the, what I'm saying? There's a lot of cost to run a nonprofit. People get mistaken. And then one thing I will tell all the community out there, if you don't understand what a nonprofit is, the only benefit that a nonprofit gets is I don't pay taxes when I go buy stuff at Walmart. That is the absolute only benefit I get. Everything else with the business part of it, same as a regular business. I have costs because if I have any employees, I got to pay them. I got to pay for my building. I got to pay for the insurance. I got to pay for everything else. Do I pay tax on anything I pay for? No, but that's the only benefit. So here's the deal. If I go to Walmart and spend $100, the $18 I would have paid in taxes, I just don't pay the $18. That's all I saved my nonprofit was $18, whatever the taxes would have been. That's it. People get mistaken that because I'm a nonprofit, people just give me stuff. No. The food bank was even charging me for food. They were charging me 19 cents a pound for the food, even though they're a nonprofit and I'm a nonprofit. I'm feeding the people they want me to help feed. They were still charging me. Now, it got to a point where they stopped charging us during COVID and stuff because they got money from Feeding America or whatever. But in the beginning, they were charging me. I had a $1,000 food bill every month from them. And then I got to pay for the diesel gas that I'm putting in the truck to go pick the food up at the locations I had to go pick it up because they wouldn't deliver it directly to me. I had to go to Copper's Cove and get it and go to Belton to get it and then bring it back to my building. So there's a lot of stipulations that go around a nonprofit, and I think people get confused. They think, oh, I don't get any government funding. I don't get any state funding. I don't get any city funding. All the money I was raising was coming from individual donors. And since we lost a food pantry, we've lost about 80% of our donors because now they weren't benefiting as directly as they were, so they stopped donating. So like right now we're doing our Christmas drive, and we're doing a mess. We got over, I think it's 300 or 400 kids already that have signed up. And we gotta get toys. But we don't have the money to go buy toys, so we have to put out boxes at different locations and hope we can raise enough toys. So hopefully we'll raise enough toys this year because people just aren't donating anymore. Plus, I understand the economy's gotten really bad in the last few years and it's made it more difficult, but $20 or $10, I tell people, donate whatever you can afford to donate each month. $5, $10, $20, whatever. If you can afford to donate, donate. If you can't, I understand. I'm not disrespecting you for that, but
Okay,
if we
so
don't raise money.
that's digging into a lot
Yeah.
of the struggles, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of positive
Oh yeah.
that has
Ton.
come from OPS.
Yeah. We fed over 1 million family members in the 10 years we did it. Over 300,000 soldiers and veterans have walked through my door to get assistance and got assistance in the 10 years. So you're talking 30,000+ a year have come through my doors to get help, and all of them got help. I think there's only been 2 soldiers that didn't get the assistance they needed. It's only because we didn't provide that service, and or I could not find it for them through the other nonprofits that I work with. Out of 10 years, 2 guys that came through my doors that I couldn't help. So I took a lot of satisfaction out of that with my team, my volunteers, and my staff that have been busting their butt for most of the time. And my staff is my mother, my aunt, my wife, and then I got 3 or 4 other people that work with me, but it's mostly family driven too. And my aunt, her husband was in the military. They got divorced, but her husband served in the military for 20 years when she was married. My mom, her husband served in the military for 20 years. I served in the military. My wife was, so all people that were involved in charity have a military/dependent background in the military, so they understood the need and what we were doing it for. And we also have a thrift store where people can donate items so we can raise money by reselling the items to help raise money for the charity too. And we're getting to the point where I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to keep that open because the store doesn't make that much money because we don't get that many people coming to shop. So it's gonna be hard. We're getting to that point where do we keep it open or not? So we're gonna see where we go with it.
There's, over the years, I've tried to pitch in and find ways. I was a local news reporter.
Yep.
And I tried to raise awareness on that platform, and I'm here on this platform trying to do the same thing.
Yep.
So while you're still operating, you might not have the food bank right now and stuff, but you're still doing what you can through the charity to try to help out. How can people get involved? How can they, find ways to donate money or our items or even time?
Yeah, that's it. They just go to our website. It's phantomsupport.org, O-R-G. They can sign up to donate right there. And like I said, I don't care how much you donate. It could be $1 a month, it could be $5, $10, whatever you can afford to donate based on your situation. That helps us because then we know we have a little money coming in every month. That's the key. If it's a monthly donation, I know it's coming. Doesn't matter the amount. What matters is it's coming. And then we take the money that we get, we distribute it. Now, I don't take a paycheck at the charity. I haven't taken a paycheck in the 10 years I've run it. All right. I pay my employees that are there working for me because although we love volunteers, you can't count 100% on a volunteer to show up and do the job every day. So you have to have employees. So there is some administrative costs and some overhead to running the charity, like we already talked about, the building and all the other stuff. I just actually sold the buildings to some friends of mine, and they're letting me stay in there for a year rent-free. And then after the year, we can sit down and go over rent, blah, 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 and base it out that way. But that was a cost saver because our mortgage payment now I don't have to pay the mortgage payment anymore. So that saved us money so I can stay open a little longer because now we don't have the mortgage payment along with everything else that we have. So that overhead's gone for at least a year. And then after that, I'll have to start renting from them if we're gonna stay in that building. We also all are looking at trying to get the pantry reopened if we can because we had to wait when the food bank kicked us out, they said we had to wait a year. But the year's coming up here in April, I think. So I can renegotiate with them and see if we can get back on board with getting food again, which will probably help a lot too, because then people will be able to depend on us again for food and we'll see what happens there. But it's a challenge, man. I mean, running a nonprofit's been my heart and soul for the last 12 years almost, but it's a lot of work.
Another way to keep serving and taking care of soldiers like you did your whole career.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, is like, you want to give back and show the guys that are serving now that even the guys that served before still want to help and still want to do the right thing because of what we went through when we were in. And we know what it's going to be like when you get out, and we can help you with that because we did that too. I had a transition program for a while where we're helping soldiers get jobs and do things in the community to help them do that. And then I just pushed that off because I have another nonprofit that does it. So now we forward everybody to them because that's what they focus on. So they're better prepared to help them. So now we push them that way. But that's what it's really about. And I have a lot of connections with all the nonprofits in the area, all over the state, because I've reached out to all of them numerous times for different soldiers and things. So I have a big collective knowledge of all the nonprofits in the area, so I know which ones will be able to help them. So that's really positive too. Fort Cavazos, God bless its heart, it's been an up and down relationship with them, which has made it challenging. Different sergeant majors and different colonel generals that have come in there have done different things. Some have been more supportive than others, even though we're doing so much for their soldiers. And then primarily tell them, I said, look, your soldiers come to me. I don't go to them. They come here and find me and need help. That means your leadership is lacking because they're not doing their job and making sure that soldier knows to go to them. Blah, blah, blah. But that's fine. I'm still trying to help. All I'm trying to do in the end is make sure that soldier's squared away so he's not a problem for your unit, chain of command, and all that other stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do. But they've never given me money. The chaplain service on post has donated a few times. They'll have one Sunday a year that they take all their collections and they make a donation to the charity. So that's been helpful from time to time. But the chaplain service there has been great. We work with them directly a lot too, with a lot of soldiers that come through. But the base itself, Garrison, the Fort Hood people, they all know me for the most part because they know what I do. But they're handcuffed, so to speak, because they can't give me money and stuff. But they can. So there's a lot of things that change. Maybe one day the charity might have to move on the base. Maybe they'll give me a spot on the base that I can keep it open and keep going on the base. I don't know. We'll see if we get to that point.
Well, I mean, even the name is kind of.
Well, I named it
from
Phantom Support so that we could connect with the soldiers on Fort Hood or Fort Cavazos, because Fort Cavazos, the 3 Corps are known as Phantom Warriors. So I wanted the name Phantom in the charity name, so we just kind of connected to the base. Because we really are a local charity. We're not a nationwide charity. We're basically here, local Central Texas, the veterans and soldiers that live here. That's all I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to help everybody in the whole world. I'm trying to help the ones that live in my in my community to make sure that their life is okay.
So if there's people out there that want to help you keep this thing going,
Yep.
because it's struggling pretty hard right now, they just need to go to phantomsupport.org.
And just there's a donation button right there. You click on it, and then you can put a custom amount in. You can pick one of the ones we already have on there.
Well, what if they don't have money? Can they donate time?
Yeah, they can volunteer. They can just shoot us an email saying, hey, they want to volunteer and help out, and then we'll hook them up. They might have a service, or I have a lot of businesses out there that a lot of times will offer services for free to help us get through certain. Like I've had companies reach out about helping with payroll. They said they'd do it for free for us. So even if you own a business, your business might be able to help us do something. If you, like for instance, if you own a car repair shop and you're local and you want to help me, well then work with me, because the way I do it with I work with the local shops. There's a veteran-owned shop that I use right now. Basically, I send them there. The shop donates 25% of the bill. I donate the other. I take care of the other 25%. The soldier only pays the other 50%. So if their bill's $1,000, they only end up donating $500, and they get the car fixed for the $1,000 repair for $500. So I saved them $500, and then me and the shop cover the difference of the other $250 each. So that's what we do it. So there could be businesses out there that just want to help, and can do things to provide services for soldiers and veterans, and I can work with them. I've had roofing companies step up and do 1 roof a year for free for a veteran that was in a struggling situation. But then that business shut down, so that stopped. So do you see what I'm saying? So it's really about who's out there that owns businesses that want to do something in this community. So.
Okay. So, but you also got other businesses. I mean, you're rocking the Phantom Warrior Brewing Company shirt.
Yeah, I own the only brewery in Killeen right now. Veteran-owned and operated, of course. Award-winning beer. It's just a good place to hang out. And that's another reason why I bought it, because another veteran owned it. She came to me when her situation changed and she couldn't own it anymore, so I bought it from her. But when I got in there, I realized, hey, this could be a really cool place for veterans to sit and hang out and just have a beer and just shoot the shit and talk, and just good atmosphere. And that's what I want, and that's what I turned it into. It's a really great atmosphere for guys to just kind of hang out with their friends, have a few beers, have some popcorn. We got food trucks. They can relax. We have live music, poker night, trivia night, karaoke nights, all kind of different fun stuff going on at the brewery all the time, so you can get out of the house and kind of do something fun.
And it's right here in Killeen?
Right here in Killeen, right by the Texas Workforce Commission off the 190, right behind, I like to say right behind IHOP. It's right behind IHOP on 195 over there, because it's easier to find. But yeah, we got a sign up there in the war, but we're right there by the fire. It's right by the water department over there off of on Cheyenne. So.
In Jasper there.
Jasper, the Botanical, and then Cheyenne. But it's right there in the corner of Botanical and Cheyenne. So.
And you guys even have a beer in there that.
Yeah, donates to the charity. So it's called Phantom Ale. And we donate 50% of the proceeds of the beer to the charity every month. So if we sell $1,000 in beer, then I donate $500 to the charity.
Yeah, and I enjoy a beer from time to time, and I'll tell you guys that the Phantom Ale is not bad. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you coming on and talking.
Yeah, no worries. Sure.
It's. I didn't serve, you know that.
Yep.
I had family that did, and I've spent the last about a decade trying to do what I'm trying to do here. Raise awareness, get the word out.
And this is a little shout out for Adam. He's not really giving himself enough credit. He's done a lot of work in this community about pointing out things. When he was working for Channel 25 and all the stuff he was doing, he was pointing out all the great things that veterans are doing in the community, soldiers are doing stuff in the community. He made a huge effort to make sure that this community knew about what the soldiers and veterans in this community were doing. And he doesn't get applauded for that enough, and he should have. And he should, because he's made differences in people's lives because of his reporting skills. So I want to thank you, because you've done a lot for the charity and a lot for me personally throughout the years, and I appreciate it.
That's what friends are for, man.
You would think that, yeah.
I try. But, and I want to keep this podcast going, guys. So, follow us on social media. We're on, right now we're streaming on Spotify. You can find this podcast on YouTube. We're working on, we're on Facebook. We're on TikTok. We're working on expanding that. And a lot of that's going to come from your support. The more the community is affected and helped by this podcast, the more we can keep it going, the more people we can get to come on, and feedback's always important. If there's somebody out there that wants to know more or has a topic they'd like us to talk about, we can find different people to bring on. People like Nick Valentine, who did really crucial work out there and is still doing crucial work in this community. And from somebody who lives here in Killeen, right down the road, I appreciate what you do. And again, thank you for coming on.
No worries, appreciate it.
And again, guys, follow us on social media. Let us know what you think, and we'll keep this thing going.